Exodus chapter 40, verse 1. Then the Lord said to Moses. Verse 2. Set up the tabernacle, the tent of meeting, on the first day of the first month. Verse 3. Place the ark of the covenant law in it and shield the ark with the curtain. Verse 4. Bring in the table and set out what belongs on it. Then bring in the lampstand and set up its lamps. Verse 5. Place the gold altar of incense in front of the ark of the covenant law and put the curtain at the entrance to the tabernacle. Verse 6. Place the altar of burnt offering in front of the entrance to the tabernacle, the tent of meeting. Verse 7. Place the basin between the tent of meeting and the altar and put water in it. Verse 8. Set up the courtyard around it and put the curtain at the entrance to the courtyard. Verse 9. Take the anointing oil and anoint the tabernacle and everything in it. Consecrate it and all its furnishings, and it will be holy. Verse 10. Then anoint the altar of burnt offering and all its utensils. Consecrate the altar, and it will be most holy. Verse 11. Anoint the basin and its stand and consecrate them. Verse 12. Bring Aaron and his sons to the entrance to the tent of meeting and wash them with water. Verse 13. Then dress Aaron in the sacred garments. Anoint him and consecrate him so he may serve me as priest. Verse 14. Bring his sons and dress them in tunics. Verse 15. Anoint them just as you anointed their father, so they may serve me as priests. Their anointing will be to a priesthood that will continue throughout their generations. Verse 16. Moses did everything just as the Lord commanded him. Verse 17. So the tabernacle was set up on the first day of the first month in the second year. Verse 18. When Moses set up the tabernacle, he put the bases in place, erected the frames, inserted the crossbars and set up the posts. Verse 19. Then he spread the tent over the tabernacle and put the covering over the tent, as the Lord commanded him. Verse 20. He took the tablets of the covenant law and placed them in the ark, attached the poles to the ark and put the atonement cover over it. Verse 21. Then he brought the ark into the tabernacle and hung the shielding curtain and shielded the ark of the covenant law, as the Lord commanded him. Verse 22. Moses placed the table in the tent of meeting on the north side of the tabernacle outside the curtain. Verse 23. And set out the bread on it before the Lord, as the Lord commanded him. Verse 24. He placed the lampstand in the tent of meeting opposite the table on the south side of the tabernacle. Verse 25. And set up the lamps before the Lord, as the Lord commanded him. Verse 26. Moses placed the gold altar in the tent of meeting in front of the curtain. Verse 27. And burned fragrant incense on it, as the Lord commanded him. Verse 28. Then he put up the curtain at the entrance to the tabernacle. Verse 29. He set the altar of burnt offering near the entrance to the tabernacle, the tent of meeting, and offered on it burnt offerings and grain offerings, as the Lord commanded him. Verse 30. He placed the basin between the tent of meeting and the altar and put water in it for washing. Verse 31. And Moses and Aaron and his sons used it to wash their hands and feet. Verse 32. They washed whenever they entered the tent of meeting or approached the altar, as the Lord commanded Moses. Verse 33. Then Moses set up the courtyard around the tabernacle and altar and put up the curtain at the entrance to the courtyard. And so Moses finished the work. Lord. Verse 34. Then the cloud covered the tent of meeting, and the glory of the Lord filled the tabernacle. Verse 35. Moses could not enter the tent of meeting because the cloud had settled on it, and the glory of the Lord filled the tabernacle. Verse 36. In all the travels of the Israelites, whenever the cloud lifted from above the tabernacle, they would set out. Verse 37. But if the cloud did not lift, they did not set out until the day it lifted. Verse 38. So the cloud of the Lord was over the tabernacle by day, and fire was in the cloud by night, in the sight of all the Israelites during all their travels.